Please stand for the entrance of the Deputy Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the Honorable K. Peter Turnquest, President of the University of the Bahamas, Dr. Rodney Smith, Vice President of University of the Bahamas North, Dr. Ian Strachan, and CAO of ALIV, Damien Blackburn, which will be immediately followed by the singing of the National Anthem by Anna Marie Amerthil and the prayer by Dr. Keith A. Russell, pastor of First Baptist Church.
Lift up your head to the rising sun, Bahamaland. March on to glory, your bright banners waving high. See how the world marks the manner of your bearing, pledged to excel through love and unity, pressing onward, march together to a common loftier goal, steady sunward, though the weather hides the wide and treacherous shore. Lift up your head to the rising sun, Bahamaland, till the road you've trod leads unto your God. March on, Bahamaland.
Let us pray. O Lord our God, creator and sustainer of this vast expanse of universe, how excellent is your name. We are grateful to be alive in this another day that you have made. We rejoice and we are glad that you continue to allow your perpetual light to shine upon this sun-kissed archipelago. As we gather here on this new day, we ask for your divine presence. Sanctify this moment. Grant us new wisdom, creativity, and vision as we discuss our stated theme of reflecting, reimaging, and rebuilding. Remind us of our collective responsibility and that many hands together make for lighter work. And as we continue to journey into this uncharted region that is now our new reality in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, be a lamp to our feet and a light unto our pathway. Grant us a determined mind to work. Remind us again that people are more important than things or profit. In our imaginative construal of our way forward, help us to always consider the least of these, the left out, the left behind. Now, O Lord, lead us beside still waters, restore our souls, and lead us in the path of justice. Allow goodness and mercy to abide with us always. Let this gathering be enlightening, inspiring, and fruitful. And when we shall leave this gathered space, grant that we may never ever leave your divine and holy presence. In the name of Christ our Lord. Amen.
You may be seated. In an effort to ensure that we are being more sustainable, the schedule of this conference is online. And for those asking for the Wi-Fi password, it's easy, UB lowercase. Thank you to Pelican Bay. So here to officially welcome you to the second biennial Sustainable Grand Bahama Conference is the Vice President of University of the Bahamas North and the visionary behind the conference, Dr. Ian G. Strachan. Please welcome him to the podium.
Good morning. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister K. Peter Turnquest, Mr. Damien Blackburn, CEO of ALIV, Dr. Rodney Smith, President, University of the Bahamas, other high-ranking government officials, corporate leaders, fellow academicians, members of the clergy, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the second biennial Sustainable Grand Bahama Conference. We conceived the Sustainable Grand Bahama Conference in order to position the university as the premier space for objective and informed dialogue on matters relevant to the economic, social, environmental, and cultural future of Grand Bahama, and by extension, the Northern Bahamas. Grand Bahama is unique, as many of you know, in our country because of its economic diversity. And that diversity brings with it concerns related to environmental impacts, public safety, and questions about the depth and breadth of local participation and ownership of the economy. Grand Bahama is also unique because of the governance model it employs, as there are few, if any, examples in existence of a private company like the port running a city and its suburbs. There can be no better place, therefore, to study issues of sustainable development in our country than in Grand Bahama. This is our second conference. The first was held in 2018. And we had published a call for papers by the middle of 2019, but then a Category 5 hurricane named Dorian happened. And we saw the wisdom in shifting our focus from broader questions of sustainable development in order to zero in on the impact of this extraordinary hurricane. We know that UN Sustainable Goal 13 speaks to climate action, so we're not going that far afield by focusing on this history-making storm. Our big concern is to make sure that we get smarter as a people, that we prepare better, build stronger, plan and execute more effectively, and respond methodically. Our country, and Grand Bahama in particular, will face life-threatening storms of increasing intensity in the years to come. Will we be ready? How do we get ready? The university wants to play its part and fulfill its mission of supporting national development. And we can think of no better way of doing that than hosting this conference, Hurricane Dorian, Reflecting, Reimagining, Rebuilding. We have over 50 speakers from around the country, the region, North America, and Europe, who will be engaging in a 360-degree look at this event, its impact, and the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. What lessons can be learned from other parts of the world that have come through disasters of this and greater magnitude? How do we measure success in the context of annual unavoidable superstorms? I wish to acknowledge our gold sponsor, ALIV, whose performance during Dorian has won them the affection of thousands of Bahamians. I also wish to thank Grand Bahama Power, Equinor, Mical, Pelican Bay, Ministry of Grand Bahama, the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and Generali for all stepping up and helping us deliver what we believe will be a transformative experience for our community and our country. Abraham Lincoln once said, "I am a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts and bear." Just a little bit. Dorian was the worst disaster in almost 100 years in our country. But good can come out of horrible tragedy. The good will come if we learn and change, if we raise our voices against climate injustice, if we practice what we preach in terms of conservation and clean energy use, if we build more intelligently, if we equip those who must stand in harm's way with the tools they need, if we give each citizen the knowledge and skills necessary to increase their chances of survival, and if we prepare. I believe the recommendations that will emerge from these sessions will help the Bahamas be more resilient and be more proactive in the future. Adaptation is the key to our survival. I close with the words of Greta Thunberg. The climate crisis has already been solved. We already have all the facts and solutions. All we have to do is wake up and change. Once again, welcome and thank you for joining us.
A new entrant mobile network operator in the Bahamas on 1st July 2016 as Chief Executive Officer. He has over 20 years working at senior level across the global telecommunication industry, having held senior management positions with Virgin Mobile, BT Group, Digicel, and Vodafone in the USA, European, and Caribbean regions. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Damien Blackburn to the podium.
Thank you very much. with protocol firmly and beautifully established. I won't attempt to repeat that. I do ask for the slides to come. I'm just going to introduce the themes for the conference. So we'll just go to the next slide, please. So this is just reflecting. So I thought it was important we just go back there to remind ourselves of the vast devastation we all awoke to, particularly in this island, the day after the storm passed. It was a terrible experience. I came here first and met Richard and the ALIV team, and to see what you had to go through here was truly unbelievable for those of us who hadn't actually gone through it. And all we said in ALIV was we pledged to stand with you and come through it before, during and after the storm, and hopefully we're living up to that pledge.
With the storm approaching, ALIV wants to inform you of our preparations to ensure that you, our valued customers, receive the same great service you're used to, even during an unpredictable hurricane season. ALIV routinely tests the network capabilities of its 243 cell sites across the Bahamas, 93 of which have a backup generator that can provide an additional 8 hours of service in case of a power failure. This ensures that you can remain connected to your family and friends during the storm. We are aware that the current track of Hurricane Dorian poses a direct hit to Grand Bahama, Bimini, Abaco, and Northern Luther, with a possible hit to New Providence and the Berry Islands. We can report that 95% of the sites on those islands have backup generator capacity. We have resources deployed on each of those islands who can assist should there be an issue with any of the generators. We are deploying an advanced team of engineers to each of the islands in the path, so that in the event of any physical destruction, we can immediately begin repairs. All other island and keys will be deployed from Nassau as soon as all clear is given from emergency services. In addition to network preparedness, ALIV has also relocated its customer care team to New Providence. This means that we will be able to provide you with uninterrupted customer support during this time. As equipped as we may be when these unfortunate events take place, anything is possible, and we want persons to prepare effectively. Purchase the necessary items that are listed by the National Emergency Management Agency NEMA's website. Pay close attention to alerts and warnings deployed by those agencies, as well as ALIV alerts via text messages or on our social media platform. Ensure that you top up you or any of your family or friends' wallet at any ALIV location vendor or through my ALIV app. To increase connectivity, you may also purchase a MiFi device or power bank to ensure that all your necessary electronic devices are charged. ALIV will continue to work in partnership with REV, as well as NEMA, to monitor storm systems. We will leverage the full arsenal of our combined strengths to ensure that you remain connected. We cannot predict what will happen in the coming days, but we are committed to doing our very best to help you through the next few days. We implore Bahamians at large to continue to follow precautionary procedures. As always, we will be there on the other side of the storm to provide support to the community we serve. Batten up, Bahamas, and stay connected.
So that's Dwayne Davis, who's here today. He's the Chief Information Officer of ALIV, and he's responsible when these unfortunate things happen for our preparedness plan and leading us through the disaster recovery efforts. And I'm sure you can all agree Dwayne did an amazing job doing that. So really the purpose of playing that video was to show you the ALIV preparation that goes in to something like Hurricane Dorian. As Dwayne said, You can't predict exactly what's going to happen, but it's very important to plan. As a result, this was the network coverage immediately after Dorian. A lot of you know here, the network managed to work in Freeport throughout the entire storm. I was speaking to Richard regularly, which is amazing. Why did that happen? Because when we designed and planned the network, we made certain decisions. Some of them were very costly. We also were born in a hurricane. 5 days after we switched the network on, the ALIV network, which was then Newco's network, you'll recall, we were hit by Hurricane Matthew. For example, one of the lessons we learned in Freeport, we needed to bury more fibre to connect the sites. That's why the sites stayed connected in Freeport. After Matthew, we made the right decision. Cable Bahamas buried more fibre. We built the towers at the beginning to withstand Category 5 hurricanes. We didn't have to, we weren't mandated to. Not just that, on the concrete that those towers are sat on, the engineering team didn't let me do it in a rush or do it fast. They did the opposite. They dug the holes twice as big. They made sure it could withstand pressure. So what happened on our recovery? 9 days after Dorian, we got Abaco back completely. We lost Abaco at one point for 24 hours, and we got Abaco back. And 23 days after, we had everywhere, including the east end of Grand Bahama, back on. How did it happen? These are the things just to take away from our reflection phase. Planning and design. Build it right at the beginning. I can't stress enough. Plan to build it right. And we're going to come on to that as the conference progresses, I'm sure. Power is a crucial issue. Planning resilient power in everything you do, and now renewable power is the next topic, is crucial. We have backup generators and batteries, as you heard Dwayne say, on every site in the Bahamas now. Resilience in resilience in terms of the communication links. So not just do we put fibre, sometimes we bury it. Where we can't, we put microwave dishes up, which are wireless way of communicating, so the sites can talk to one another. This little boy here, Richard and I found this, and I thought this was a beautiful slide for reimagining, segueing into the next part of the conference themes. We found this little boy in McLeanstown on our second or third visit up there. He'd just got off the ferry, the first ferry to come across from Abaco. It was about 3 weeks after, and there he is. He's reimagining what life's going to be like after Hurricane Dorian, and that's what we're here to do in this conference. So imagine an island welcoming millions of people a year from every region of the world to start their trip of a lifetime, to stay in state-of-the-art hotels and be whisked through a world-class airport, to experience friendly Bahamian hospitality and culture at its finest. Imagine an island providing a beautiful home for innovation and education, an island bustling with the entrepreneurs and small businesses working in environmentally friendly and technologically advanced ways. Imagine a smart technology-led island blessed with climate-resilient buildings and infrastructure using renewable energy and sustainable materials and processes. That's my reimagining, and ALIV's reimagining, I suppose, for the islands of Grand Bahama and Abaco. I hope that gets you thinking, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of conversation and some great ideas coming out of the conference. Next, rebuilding. Here are our guys rebuilding with temporary towers initially. So the initial cleanup phase, this was part of our cleanup, having to put temporary towers out rather than permanent ones, will come to an end soon. Believe it or not. I know it doesn't feel like that all the time, but it will. Here in ALIV, we're starting our own long-term rebuild in Grand Bahama and Abaco. We're replacing these temporary towers and rolling out fibre. We're burying it where we can, or we're following the massive pole planting exercise that the power companies are leading. Our story in ALIV mirrors the communities who are rebuilding stronger, more resilient businesses, buildings and infrastructure. As a great man once said, now this is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end. but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. So I hope you have some great conversations about how to rebuild. Lastly, I'd like to just say a few thanks on behalf of ALIV. I'd like to thank the people of Grand Bahama and Abaco in particular for trusting us with their telecoms needs at this difficult time. Thank you very much. Sorry, I get a bit emotional sometimes. I'd like to thank the University of Bahamas for providing us the opportunity to be here and being our long-term strategic partners before, a long time before, during, and long after Hurricane Dorian fades from our memory. I'd like to thank Grand Bahama Power and BPL, who have worked tirelessly to bring electricity back, not just to our sites, but to people's homes. The unsung heroes on the front line, when you go out, seeing them planting the poles and pulling the power lines back is something to behold. And lastly, I turn to my ALIV family, especially in Grand Bahama and Abaco. You showed incredible resilience, courage, fortitude, and stamina, not only to survive such a terrible event, but to get off your knees the next day and serve and support devastated communities around you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Blackburn, for those touching words, and thank you for your support of our conference. I would like to welcome to the stage to bring remarks a man with over 20 years of experience in higher education, who led the transition of this institution from college to university, and continues to exemplify his commitment to the growth and development of the institution. Dr. Rodney D. Smith, President and Chief Executive Officer of University of the Bahamas, to bring remarks.
I would like to begin my brief remarks by recognizing the amazing faculty, students, and staff of UB North under the compassionate leadership of Vice President Strachan. If ever there were an example of adaptation and resilience, truly this family of educators deserved to be recognized. Within less than 1 month after Hurricane Dorian, UB North was relocated to 2 new and innovative settings, and classes resumed. Because of the university's resiliency in having all data management systems totally modernized and in the cloud, all business and academic record functions remained accessible. Students who were scheduled to graduate in May 2020 will graduate in May 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, the faculty, staff, and students of UB North are our heroes by their example. Today, we gather to kick off the second Sustainable Grand Bahama Conference. From its inception, it was aimed to challenge and enhance our thinking based on methodological research and provide alternatives and recommendations that will assist in finding solutions toward the continued sustainable socioeconomic growth and development of Grand Bahama and the Northern Bahamas, and subsequently the entire country. The genesis for the idea of having such a conference came about 4 years ago on the veranda of Sarah St. George's home, along with Mrs. Davinia Grant, VP at UB at the time. We discussed the importance of bringing together the academic, business, government, and the Port Authority for the purpose of bridging the gaps that existed between these sectors. We discussed the importance that we all had the same goals and objectives for Grand Bahama and Northern Bahamas. The conversation continued with Mr. Ian Roll, President of the Grand Bahama Port Authority, who was equally enthused. Then we talked with members of the business community who felt that this would be a step in the right direction. Of course, whenever you have an earth-shattering idea, you need an earth-shattering individual to bring it to fruition. We needed a social activist, a writer, a known playwright, an academic leader, and without a doubt, a change agent. Lo and behold, here comes Dr. Ian Strachan, the newly appointed first Vice President for University of the Bahamas Northern Campus. I only had to share that idea with him once in one conversation, and Dr. Strachan took it and did the rest. Congratulations again. In his diligence, he has steered and taken the lead to bring that idea into reality. It is anticipated that these conferences will help to move the Bahamas to the next level. Dr. Strachan's leadership, traits, and passion for UB North has been extraordinary. It is true that Hurricane Dorian has sparked global interest in these sustainable conferences. However, it was Dr. Strachan's insistence that this conference focus on the need to highlight delicate and most vulnerable existence, the most delicate and vulnerable existence of our island state, brought about as a result of the wealth creation of developed nations. It is my hope that the information and strategies that you will receive from this conference can be implemented across agencies and organizations alike. As you know, this conference themed Hurricane Dorian, reflecting, reimagining, rebuilding, will provide a timely exchange of ideas from speakers within the field and those that have conducted research on the topic, particularly our professors of University of the Bahamas. The presentations will cover an array of topics, like the results from the 2017 survey on the perception Bahamian residents have relating to climate change and how they have been impacted by Hurricane Dorian. Ms. Sonia Brown will be making the case for overhauling the construction industry, challenging legislators to improve building methods, to rethink the use of land dwellings, and to ensure that the requirements for inspections and licensing of tradespersons are enhanced. Professor Bridget Hogue will present findings of climate change researchers predicting that future storms will continue to strengthen and will likely be extremely destructive. Dr. Michelle Bettine will talk about the need to heal after natural disasters. And among the many other topics, Dr. Crystal DeGregory, a research fellow in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, will discuss social media's role in response, recovery, and reckoning during and after Hurricane Dorian. Ladies and gentlemen, I had the privilege of reviewing the abstracts for all presentations. I think it would be fair to say that over the next few days, you will be exposed and engaged in the most focused, the most comprehensive, and the most intensive discussions around climate change effects on the face of the earth. Thank you for being part of the solution and not the cause. It is now my extreme delight to introduce someone I call a friend and a brother in building our Bahamas. Someone I have come to appreciate and admire ever since my return to the Bahamas in 2014, when he sat on the other side of the house. The Honorable K. Peter Turnquest earned his Bachelor of Business Administration degree from Prairie View A&M University and his Master's of Business Administration degree from Nova Southeastern University. He is a certified public accountant and has been in public and private practice for over 30 years in the area of financial accounting and reporting, audit, corporate services, mergers and acquisitions, receiverships, and liquidations. Mr. Turnquest has had wide and extensive business experiences, having led international sales and manufacturing operations in several countries. His leadership skills have had influences across several sectors. He is a former president of the Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce, past assistant governor, Rotary International District 6990, past substitute Grand Master, District Grand Lodge of the Bahamas, Scottish Constitution, past president, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Iota Epsilon Lambda Chapter, Nassau, and the Grand Bahama Chamber, and the Grand Bahama Chairman of the Bahamas Scouts Association. The Honorable K. Peter Turnquest was elected to Parliament for the first time on May 7, 2012, as the Member of Parliament for East End Grand Bahama. Following successful re-election on May 10, 2017, the Honorable K. Peter Turnquest was appointed Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. He is married to Sonia Turnquest, and together they have 2 children, Kevin and Nathalie. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join me in welcoming our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honorable K. Peter Turnquest.
Thank you. Dr. Smith, Dr. Strachan, Mr. Blackburn, and our moderator, who I've known longer than she's known how to spell her name, Ms. Babs. I see Mr. Hayward in the audience, the co-chair of the Grand Mama Port Authority, the co-chair of the Disaster Reconstruction Authority, Mr. John Michael Clark, and members of that board. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm sure that I'm probably the only one who was so excited to be here this morning that he got up at 2 a.m. this morning waiting to catch a flight to come to Nassau just to be here. That is the level of excitement that I feel about this conference today, as I did a year ago when I had the opportunity to participate in the first conference. This is an innovative, and indeed, it is in keeping with the university's goal to expand knowledge and to provoke stimulating discussions on the future of our country and our various roles in it, and how we can advance knowledge in areas of interest, particularly to small island states. As while we are unique, we are not alone in the challenges that we face. And so I am very, very happy to be here, to be able to say just a few words, and to hopefully encourage the lively discussions that will lead to new discoveries and to international acclaim. And so again, I want to congratulate you, Dr. Strachan, and your team for again having the resilience yourselves after what you would have suffered at UB and in your personal lives to come back and to put on this conference. I think that is truly a testament to your strength and your courage and your character. And so I congratulate you. Again, this is a most important academic conference, Sustainable Grand Bahama. The University of the Bahamas plays an important role when it comes to research, learning, and innovation. And events like this are vital to information discovery and knowledge sharing. The fact that the University of the Bahamas North is hosting this event is noteworthy as well. The Northern Campus has been leading the way in sparking practical and progressive dialogue around the questions of sustainability. When I spoke last year, I mentioned that our country is the strongest when we all share a common vision and participate as individuals, communities, and institutions in advancing our shared goals. Disaster relief is a broad and somewhat all-encompassing topic, as you can see from the range of presentations over the next few days, and that means that dialogue towards building a shared vision and common understanding about the way forward for the Bahamas is most important. Over the next few days, some of the best intellectual know-how and insight will be shared by local experts and a network of international partners, and I have no doubt that the fruitful exchange will help the Bahamas to better respond to and exercise leadership during this ongoing global climate crisis. The Bahamas is no stranger to surviving natural disasters. We have a long history of withstanding hurricanes, notwithstanding the unprecedented devastation that Hurricane Dorian may have caused. And why is that significant? That means that we have a lot of insight to share, as well as lots of new learning still to do. We have proven our resilience before, and we will rise to the occasion demanded by Hurricane Dorian to strengthen our institutions, our processes, our disaster management frameworks, so that we can continue to demonstrate our resilience to the world well into the future. If you speak to hurricane historians, and we have one that's either with us or he'll be here shortly, delivering a presentation on the science of Dorian tomorrow. Weather forecaster Mr. Wayne Neely, they can paint a better picture than I or of our survival story as a nation in the hurricane belt. We had the 1933 hurricane season with 21 named storms, including one Category 5 storm that impacted the Bahamas. That was a year following the Great Abaco hurricane of 1932 that struck the Bahamas at peak intensity, completely devastating Abaco Island once before. The Great Bahamas hurricane of 1929 devastated the northwestern Bahamas and stayed over Nassau and Andros for 3 consecutive days, moving at 2 miles an hour, similar to Hurricane Dorian, which took its rest over Grand Bahama. These hurricanes were recorded almost 100 years ago, just to show you that we are no strangers to the notion of resilience. We are no novices when it comes to questions of sustainability. In fact, the late great Jackson Burnside III always encouraged students in his education work to examine our architectural heritage for its common sense. One of his posthumous biographies described his, I quote, his belief in the importance of understanding appropriateness of material, climatic conditions, natural light, structure, and client requirements in developing designs that would fit in with their natural environments, close quote. He often highlighted the unique qualities of our indigenous architecture for their use of wraparound porches, decorative windows that double as hurricane shutters, and the cardinal positioning of buildings. For example, as what is called the architecture of common sense. This context is important because as we look to the future, I know many Bahamians are filled with some anxiety about our ability to survive and thrive given the utter destruction caused by Hurricane Dorian. There is no doubt we are in a new era that is marked by a significantly warming planet and increased unpredictability. There is no doubt the resilience of our communities is being tested in ways we've never seen before. There is no doubt mass urbanization and industrialization of our societies presents new challenges to questions of sustainability. There is no doubt the collective human family is testing the nerve of Mother Nature, and not without consequence. Because of these things, we must open our eyes to new realities and remain oriented towards learning and knowledge sharing. At the same time, we should have faith, confidence, and strength in our ability and capacity as a people to survive and thrive, even in this new era of uncertainty. So we're all here to arm ourselves better for the task before us. And over the course of the conference, we can expect to discover how we can strengthen our hurricane forecasting and messaging capabilities and learn the lessons of Hurricane Dorian. To explore the need to overhaul the construction industry, to build more resilient infrastructure, to rethink emergency response plans for individuals, businesses, locally and nationally, to learn about integrating virtual reality and hydrodynamic models for flood simulation and visualization in our disaster management plans, to assess the impacts of hurricanes on school performance and approaches to building resilience in the education sector, to imagine a transformed local government that create pathways to improving Family Island resilience and lessons learned from Dorian, to analyze the mental, physical, and financial impacts on citizens, communities, and the country, even in communities that are not impacted directly by storm. These are just a few of the dynamic sessions you can expect from presenters during this conference. Overall, this will be a massive exercise in learning lessons, which is a task not only relevant to the Bahamas, but relevant to the entire world, including the developed countries just to the north of us. All around us, countries and institutions are doing their own analysis of lessons from Hurricane Dorian. Let us look at what some of the analysts have had to say. One of the provocative questions raised is whether the Saffir-Simpson scale is still relevant. Researchers writing for a multi-sectoral alliance of insurance partners in Zurich, Switzerland wrote, and I quote, "A big part of what Hurricane Dorian is showing us is hurricanes have changed. Dorian is following on the heels of 4 incredibly devastating Atlantic hurricanes, Harvey, Irma, and Michael in 2017, and Florence in 2018. Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Florence, like Dorian, were particularly huge, slow storms and dumped massive amounts of rain. Dorian has been particularly destructive in the Bahamas because not only was it huge and slow, it came with Category 5 winds. Yet, our post-event review of Hurricane Florence notes the Saffir-Simpson scale, which is based on sustained wind speed, does not account for the damaging impacts of storm surge, tides, and rainfall. Indeed, because of their slow speed, recent Category 1 and Category 2 storms in the United States have posted an equal, if not greater risk to lives and property than higher category storms before the intense rainfalls they have carried with them. What does this mean for our future?" Close quote. On the environmental justice front, researchers are raising questions based on lessons learned from Dorian about the harmful impact of more destructive storms to the physical and mental health of island-based and coastal populations. Minister of Health, Dr. Dwayne Sands, co-authored a piece for the New England Journal of Medicine in which the author states, and I quote, "These escalating effects on population health represents a double environmental injustice. Socioeconomically disadvantaged and marginalized populations sustain disproportionate harm and loss, with more hazardous storms exacerbating the inequality, and while the populations most vulnerable to Atlantic hurricanes, especially those in small island states, contribute virtually nothing to climate change, they are among those most exposed to the risk that are worsening by the carbon emissions from higher income countries." Close quote. These are fundamental questions of environmental justice that we must address as we explore lessons learned. These contributions of island-based populations to global carbon emissions is negligible. Collectively, the Caribbean's 44 million residents generate just 0.4% of total global emissions, and the Bahamas' share is well below 0.01%. The countries designated by the United Nations as small island states face climate change-associated hurricane risks that are not of their own making. Rather, high-income countries that produce fossil fuels and expend massive amounts of energy generate most of the emissions that elevate hurricane risk. And so the question is, what does this mean for our future? I share these examples to emphasize even more the fact that we cannot allow events like Dorian to pass without in-depth examination and action based on lessons learned. Before I conclude, I want to touch on a few lessons learned by the government and actions being taken to strengthen our resilience as a nation. One of the most important lessons we learned was the importance of strengthening our national framework for response, recovery, and reconstruction. I think that those of us who are here in Grand Bahama in the immediate aftermath of the storm would have to admit that NEMA needs some work. The historic scope of Dorian destruction required us to acknowledge that we need new state structures to serve more effectively. We established a new Ministry of Disaster Preparedness, Management, and Reconstruction to streamline how the government will prepare, recover, and rebuild in the event of a disaster. We are updating our laws, policies, procedures, and state agencies to support this strengthening of national disaster management mechanisms. An Act of Parliament created the Bahamas Disaster Reconstruction Authority for the management of reconstruction and restoration in the disaster zone. While the authority is focusing on reconstruction under the new framework, the National Emergency Management Agency, or NEMA, will remain focused on preparation for, mitigation against potential future disasters, and the immediate response, relief, and recovery when disasters strike. While it is expected that NEMA and the authority will collaborate on some activities, the focus of the authority will be specifically on reconstruction, addressing the challenges related to infrastructure, the economy, health, education, and the environment and housing. Previously, there was no structure in government to lead and manage these types of activities in a dedicated way, specific to reconstruction. Projects would get lost amongst the wide range priorities of government ministries that had interministerial carriage over different aspects of reconstruction. Under this new framework, reconstruction is streamlined under the authority, which is to lead the way with small home repair assistance programs. More than 200 Bahamians, and I believe it's 400 Bahamians now, have made online submissions to the small home repair program on its launch day in Grand Bahama alone. These programs allow qualifying Bahamian homeowners to use purchase orders to obtain building materials and other items related to home restoration. The Disaster Reconstruction Authority has also partnered with various NGOs in Dorian-impacted communities. Through the partnerships, the government pays for labor, and the NGOs provide services and various types of logistics and technical assistance. And let me pause just once again to recognize and thank the many, many, many non-governmental organizations, both domestic and international, who came to our aid in those very, very frightful and uncertain times immediately following the storm. We could never, ever thank them enough or give them enough credit for what they did. And as a good Rotarian, I have to point out the Rotary Clubs of Grand Bahama, who have and continue to do tremendous, tremendous work in assisting residents throughout the island of Grand Bahama, and more particularly those who have suffered direct impact, both in terms of their physical and hygienic needs, but also in the reconstruction efforts in terms of building materials. And so again, I want to thank them and acknowledge them again for the tremendous amount of work that they're doing, as well as I say, other agencies and entities who have stepped up to the plate to help us out during this most uncertain time, when even the government was trying to get its feet under it and determine and to assess the magnitude of what it is that we had to deal with. As an administration, we also see where the insurance industry is a ripe area for lessons learned. Flexible insurance policies that allow for tailored coverage are essential for meeting country-specific needs in the region. The Bahamas had the benefit of a $12.8 million payout from the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility, or CRIF. I am proud to say that the administration pioneered the restructuring of this policy, which allowed us to actually receive a benefit in our time of need. Although catastrophic risk insurance is an important component of our national disaster risk management framework, insuring with CRIF has unfortunately become politically charged. Not everyone was convinced the insurance scheme was meeting our needs as an archipelagic nation. And the truth is that in the past, we were not able to get any kind of support, even though we paid tremendous premiums, because of the way that the policy was structured. The government, however, successfully renegotiated a better deal to tailor the policy by separating the archipelago into 3 geographic zones with unique parametric triggers for each region. We recognize that flexible insurance that allows for tailored coverage is essential to our multi-layered approach to disaster risk management and for meeting our country-specific disaster needs. However, on the private side, we are finding that too many Bahamians are taking on unmanageable and unsustainable risk by not taking out insurance coverage on their homes and businesses, or are underinsured. In the aftermath of a major hurricane, the damage and loss to the private sector is significantly larger than the damage and loss incurred by the government or the public sector. This was the case with Hurricane Dorian, where estimated damages alone was $2.5 billion, of which 91% was private sector losses. Losses were estimated at $717.3 million and were also sustained primarily in the private sector, which accounted for 84% of the total. Some insurance experts estimate that anywhere from 40% to 50% of persons in the affected area after Dorian were uninsured, and some 75% were underinsured. This is consistent with previous years in the Bahamas, and unfortunately also for the Caribbean region, so we're not unique in that. From the Wall Street Journal, I quote, "The Caribbean suffers $32 billion in economic loss from a slew of large hurricanes in 2017, but only $5 billion, or 16%, was insured, according to ratings firm AM Best. In recent years, insurance payments from hurricanes hitting the U.S. have ranged from less than 1/3 to about 60% of economic losses, depending on the level of flooding, which isn't covered under standard home policies." Close quote. This is all relevant from a fiscal point of view, because in the event of a significant loss, this exposed risks is transferred to the government, which is neither tenable nor budgeted for, and thus poses a substantial threat to the country's finances and credit standing. Imagine that $3.4 billion of loss, economic loss, between Abaco and Grand Bahama. Imagine what would happen if such a storm were to hit New Providence. Unimaginable. We are, as a government, putting aside $10 million to try and assist underinsured and uninsured residents who have no alternative means to repair their homes. But $10 million is a drop in the bucket if you would consider just one community of Baintown and Grantstown in New Providence. And so it is incumbent upon all of us, and I got hit by this by some critics who said that I was saying to people or knocking people in their worst time, suggesting that we all need to take personal responsibility and do what we can to insure our own assets and to protect ourselves. But that's the reality. Because again, if we were to suffer a significant storm of the magnitude of Hurricane Dorian coming up the ALIV, coming up across New Providence and coming up into the north, we would all be singing, "Woe is me," because nobody would be able to help anybody. And so that is just a practical reality, that we have to do what we can as citizens to help protect our own assets and in so doing, help to protect our country as a whole, because there's no way that the country would be able to carry that kind of loss if we were to face such a threat. And to anyone who believes that that is not a possibility, let me disabuse you of that view, because we do live in a very, very vulnerable and active hurricane zone. And so we have to be prepared. As we look at lessons learned, we need to look at the importance of insurance to the disaster risk framework. As you know, the cost to finance the Hurricane Dorian recovery is quite significant and has required the government to borrow money. Based on the lessons learned, one of the ways we are investing these borrowed funds is on strategic investments that will benefit us now and well into the future. The government has committed $100 million in IDB loan financing so far to firmly establish renewable energy initiatives in the Family Island over 3 years via the Family Island Solarization Project. This investment will facilitate the development of utility scale and rooftop solar facilities and help the country to leapfrog the goals set by the Prime Minister's office for the country to produce 4.5% of its total energy mix for renewable sources by 2021. In Abaco and Grand Bahama, where the electrical grid was significantly damaged, not only are we rebuilding, but we are building back better with more resilient infrastructure. I think they call them class 1 poles versus class 2 poles, which has worked well in here in Grand Bahama, where the power company, after following the last storm, installed the thicker poles. They were able to withstand the hurricane much better. And so we are investing in that infrastructure, even as we know the real way it should be done is to put it underground. But I understand it's at least 30% more costly to put it underground than it is to put it overhead with these thicker poles. And so for now, with the resources that we have, that's the route that we're taking. We are demonstrating our capacity with this in Ragged Island. And despite the misconception that nothing is happening, the Ragged Island Solar Field project is well underway. In July 2019, the engineering, procurement, and construction contract for Ragged Island's Solar Field project tender was awarded to Tug League Energy Company and its construction partner, Salt Energy. The selected design was focused on providing the island with over 90% renewable energy, achieving a significant reduction in the island's diesel consumption. Additionally, War Construction, whom we are all familiar with, was subcontracted to work on the solar project. Since the project was mobilized in November 2019, the first solar panels for the Ragged Island microgrid was planted in the ground. In December, the solar field site was prepared, including the clearing of interconnected line access roadways. As of January 2020, 40% of the solar panels were installed for the new microgrid, and Bahamas Power and Light has already moved forward with construction of its solar and battery storage solutions. In other words, the solar farm is rapidly taking shape, which means Ragged Island is still on track to become the first green island in the Bahamas. The last thing I will touch on is the importance of boosting economic activity to support hurricane recovery and the lessons we've learned from Dorian. The government unveiled an unprecedented package of tax incentives and concessions as a key part of the establishment of the Special Economic Recovery Zone in the aftermath of Dorian. This zone program represents a pioneering approach to providing direct support and assistance to Bahamians in a way that has never been contemplated before in the history of the country. We also tailor-made a suite of small business development programs specifically for businesses damaged in the disaster zone and provided $10 million to the Small Business Development Center to ensure they get back on their feet quickly and with support. Lastly, we continue to bolster the inflow of foreign direct investments, supporting the Ministry of Tourism's marketing strategy that reminded the world that notwithstanding the impacts of Dorian, the Bahamas was and still is open for business. Just this week, the government signed the heads of agreement for the sale of the Grand Lucayan Resort and Casino, a development that Grand Bahamians have long been awaiting. As the Prime Minister said, that $300 million investment by Royal Caribbean and the ITM Group represents the beginning of a new day and will go a long way to revitalizing the island's economy. 3,000 direct and indirect jobs will be created through that investment. Just a few weeks ago, the Prime Minister signed a heads of agreement for a residential resort and marina in South Abaco. The capital investment in that project is approximately $300 million also, and will help in the reconstruction and revival of Abaco. This development will include, but is not limited to, Rosewood and SLS brand hotels and a full-size golf course. It is expected to employ approximately 600 people during the construction phase and thereafter. The project is also triggering the expansion of the Sandyport Airport. In other words, we are setting an example that our approach to disaster relief must be comprehensive, not only addressing the immediate needs for support, but also the mechanisms that will lead to sustainable livelihoods after the fact. As we open this Sustainable Grand Bahama Conference, I hope I've made the point that we have a solid foundation to build on as a nation when it comes to questions of resilience. That it is imperative for us to be open to new learning and knowledge sharing, given the new realities we face. And that as a country, we have to act on the lessons we've learned so that we can continue to build a sustainable future for ourselves, our families, and our communities. The current climate crisis and the associated catastrophic risk of natural disasters presents a real threat to the Bahamas, with impacts that are uniquely felt by small island developing nations. With each passing storm, whether it's on the doorstep of Dominica, the British Virgin Islands, or the islands of the Bahamas, more and more of our vulnerabilities are being exposed. Not only in terms of our economic resilience and national response, but also at the individual level for families wondering about their physical safety and their economic security should they be in the path of the next storm. Your participation in this conference is a sign that you and we are up to the task of facing the challenges before us. And so I end where I began, thanking you for your presence here today and the important discussions that will be provoked by your presentations. And as I leave, I just want to encourage you again that while we continue to struggle through our reconstruction efforts, and while there are many of us still grieving loss of loved ones, that there is a brighter future for Grand Bahama and for indeed the Bahamas. We are a resilient people who have tremendous faith in our God and in each other. And as long as we maintain those two tenets, there is nothing that we cannot overcome. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
As we close this opening ceremony, we want to thank everyone in attendance. And like everyone at the podium has mentioned, this is an important conference for University of the Bahamas North and for, by extension, Bahamas, the region, and the world. Announcements, as we know, the coronavirus is very prevalent in our minds, so we want a few announcements. We do have a nurses station out front, so if anyone is feeling ill or may need some attending to, you can see our nurses station. We ask that all conference attendees take caution when shaking your hands as well. We ask that you cough into your elbows and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds, or like they say, the happy birthday song. We have hand sanitizers available in every meeting space. And again, the Wi-Fi code is UB. We will now prepare as the podium guests prepare to leave and take their group photo. We prepare for the first panel of our conference, which is Hurricane Dorian, the regional context. We ask our moderator, Dr. Danny Davis, to prepare to come up. Thank you very much for attending the opening ceremony this morning.